All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Women in Sports virtual panel. Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Sam Armstrong. I'm the marketing manager for the Canton Charge. I am taking place of Jan Burke, who is an extraordinary leader on our ticket sales efforts. She was not able to make it tonight, so I'm filling in. And very excited for tonight's panel, hearing all the stories of all the conversations that have happened. Just going to be some great things to come out of tonight's conversation. So with that being said, I want to get it started and introduce our host for the evening. She is our community relations manager for the Canton Charge, Joanna Radov.
Thanks, Sam. So excited to be here, guys. As Sam said, we have an amazing group of panelists for tonight that I've been talking to a few weeks now, and everyone knows I've been fangirling pretty hard, so I'm really excited to finally have this night come together. Quick background about me: I did my undergrad at Franklin and Marshall College. I have my master's in social anthropology from the University of Edinburgh, but it is not about me tonight. It is about these 6 amazing women. So just to go off the list real fast for a little humble brag, first we're going to start. We have Coach Lindsay Gottlieb, the assistant coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. We have Muhleman, the Executive Vice President of New Business Development, Marketing, and Sales with the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. We have Angela Palomba, Director of First Tee Canton. We have Payne, the Community Relations Specialist for the Cleveland Monsters. Renee Powell, the Lpga and PGA Head Golf Professional from Clearview Golf Club. And Jen Yorko, the General Manager of the Lake County Captains. And I'm gonna turn it to them because really this is about them and let them tell you their story. So first we're gonna start with Lindsay, just learning a bit about your background and your career, and let's get it going.
Sure, well, I'll unmute myself. We're all Zoom experts at this time. I'm really excited to be here. What an incredible group of women. I feel really humbled to share the space with you all and excited to learn about some of your stories. I grew up in New York in a family of a lot of lawyers, and our dinner table conversations were either about sports or somebody's case that was going on. And so when I went to college, I studied political science, and I thought I would either go into the legal profession or I always had kind of a thought about going into sports. I thought more so commentating or sports writing. And it was while I was a collegiate athlete at Brown that I sort of realized coaching on the college level was my calling. Mainly because, well, first of all, I'm like total X's and O's nerd, and I realized this was a profession. Like, you get paid to do this, think about basketball all the time. And simultaneously, I just saw the impact that the coaching staff had on my experience and those of my teammates and my friends playing around the country. So got my first job the day after I graduated from Brown. It was at Syracuse University, and I coached in women's college basketball for the next 20 years at the University of New Hampshire, Richmond. I went to Cal as an assistant. I got my first head coaching job at UC Santa Barbara, and then returned to Cal as the head coach in 2011, where I was for 8 years as the head coach. And then the Cavs called, and I know it sounds kind of simple and straightforward. That's really how it happened. I had connections in the NBA. I had always enjoyed the pro game. I always thought maybe there was a future somewhere else, but it wasn't kind of directly in front of me until someone connected me with Kobe Altman, who said, hey, we want to build a different kind of staff here. I know what you've done. I think you bring a skill set that we could really be valued here. And so I made the leap to the NBA, and I'm starting my second season literally in the middle of training camp right now. So just excited to be here and offer any thoughts I can that might help other women who are interested in getting in the sports world or are already in the business.
Awesome. Next, we're going to turn it to Erica.
Hi, everybody. Like Lindsay, I am thrilled to be here and feel honored to be a part of this amazing panel. I am originally from Northeast Ohio. I'm from Louisville and have recently moved back. So I am thrilled to be back with family. But I got my start over 20 years ago in sports, where I took an opportunity with the Cleveland Browns when they were the expansion team back in 1999. I never thought that I would get into sports. I got my undergrad at Ohio University in psychology. I wanted to be a psychologist, but then I went on to graduate school at Cleveland State, more on the marketing research arm of it. So when I actually started my career, I was working at Roadway Express, doing a lot of marketing research in transportation. Candidly, not the most exciting of opportunities, but was, thrilled to have a job. But back then in '99 is when, the Browns came back. A friend of mine was working for the Browns, and she said, hey, they're hiring in marketing. You should apply. So I applied, not thinking I would ever get called. Did get called, went for the interview, and the only opportunity at that point was to be an executive assistant for my boss, who oversaw marketing, sponsorships, ticketing, and suites, premium seating. And knowing that these opportunities are few and far between, I jumped at the chance to be a part of it. I grew up a Cleveland sports fan, so that is really where I got my start. And my boss at the time said, you're overqualified for the position, but I will give you this opportunity. Just work hard, do your job, and then good things will come along the way. So I was at the Browns for 5 years, and then the opportunity to work for IMG and work in the tennis division with individual athletes was very appealing to me. Working with a couple of agents, helping to oversee really all aspects of managing, the tennis clients that they had, from media interviews to making sure they had their equipment to making sure their visas were set for playing around the world. So it was an amazing experience. Was in tennis for a bit and then moved over to the golf division, where it was more consulting, where I oversaw a program with Bank of America where we put together a lot of different types of events, not just golf, but different types of activities that their card holders could redeem points for. And then candidly, I missed working in the NFL. I missed working for a team, and the opportunity with the Buffalo Bills came about. So jumped at the chance. My son was 9 months old at the time. It was a crazy time, but never looked back from, the opportunity to get back into the NFL. And really, that's where I oversaw a lot of the business development activity, from sponsorships to, some of the ticketing and revenue generating areas. Then my role with the Buffalo Bills expanded when there was an ownership change under Pagula Sports and Entertainment, to where not only was I working for the Buffalo Bills, but the other teams that they owned 5 teams at the time. So overseeing a lot of those activities from a revenue generating standpoint, sponsorships for Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Sabres, Buffalo Bandits, which is the National Lacrosse team, Rochester Americans, the AHL team, and the Buffalo Buttes, which was the women's hockey team. So amazing experience to be able to do that. And then the opportunity with Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company to come back home was very appealing for me and my family. And currently, like Joanna had mentioned, I oversee marketing, new business development, and sales. So excited to be here as well, like Lindsay, where I can help and really, in this sports landscape as it has changed so much, I am happy to be here and provide some insight.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. And next, we're going to turn it over to Angela.
Hi, everybody. Again, I want to echo my thanks too. This is great, Joanna. Thank you, Canton Charge, Cavs. This is a great opportunity for us to talk just about our experiences and hopefully be able to give somebody a chance to pick up on something that might benefit them in their career path. But listening to Erica, it's kind of funny, where we've got a lot of similar paths, and I thought your name sounded familiar, but I am too also originally from Louisville. I grew up there. Kind of made my path outside of the area, eventually back to Stark County. So I went to Ohio University for my undergrad. I did a lot of, when I first got there, I started off with a criminal justice major. I wanted to be a criminologist. And I had an older brother who had gone to Dayton, and he was going through the sports management program there. And it just was more appealing to me based on my, the things that we grew up with. We always played sports, like golf when I was a kid, softball, all those sports. So I made a shift and changed to get a sports business degree at OU and interned in the athletic department. And at that time, a company called ISP Sports was working for Ohio University as their rights holder, handling all their corporate sponsorship. So I interned kind of a dual role with ISP and the athletic department, and that opened up a door when I graduated to be able to start right with ISP. So I moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I worked there in their corporate office, getting to know the basics. So I was an admin. I answered the phones. I went to the bank for the CEO. I mean, I did all the grunt work, and then 10 months into that position, I got promoted and I moved to Nashville, and I worked at the Vanderbilt partnership. And I spent about 8 months there. So I moved quite a bit in my early days with the company, but I moved back to Winston-Salem, and I spent about 4 years working for Wake Forest for the property there. And that was the first relationship that ISP had, was Wake Forest. So it was kind of cool to be able to have that experience. From there, I moved to Pitt, and I worked at University of Pittsburgh, was in Pitt for about a year, and then made my way back to Ohio and was working at Kent State. And then while I was at Kent State, I was promoted to manage our relationship with the MAC and Kent State. So I was spending time in Cleveland and Kent and kind of handling both relationships for, at that time, IMG had purchased ISP Sports, and we were in the IMG college division. So I worked in that kind of that background for about 13 and a half years. And so it just, for me, was a great experience, and getting to move around. And Joanna and I talked about that kind of builds a lot about what you can build on with your experiences by moving, and sports is known for that, as the other women have said, that you kind of move around quite a bit to get to different places. And so for me, golf's always been part of my background, and I was at a point where I was just ready to make a change. So it was interesting for me. I made a shift from working for 13 and a half years in a for-profit industry, and went to the nonprofit side of it. So I'm now at the First Tee, the Canton Chapter, and I've been here for 7 years. And I'm the executive director, so that basically means I do really anything and everything. It's a small nonprofit organization. I mean, every day varies, but I handle basically fund development, working with our donors, operations, managing the facility, programs, you name it. So it's been a great opportunity, getting to basically have the chance to do a little bit of everything with that organization. It's been great to see the immediate impact with working with kids. So again, thank you for having me. Look forward to hearing more from everybody else.
Awesome, thank you. My favorite thing is that we're on gallery view right now, and just seeing everybody nodding their head like, yes, yes, I understand, and playing the geography of our networks before. So that was a lot of fun. Next, we're gonna turn it over to Raven.
Hi, everyone. No, I can definitely echo Lindsay, and just being humbled to be a part of this panel. We talked about before all of this that I was the youngest one here as well, and kind of new to the sports industry still. So it's really exciting to just be here, and really I'm here to listen and learn as well. But also just give a little insight in just where I come from. So born in Cleveland, raised in Cleveland, and I'm still in Cleveland, was able to come back and work in sports. So it's kind of the difference of Erica and Angela. Talking about the moving, sometimes there is still opportunities back at home, which is really nice as well. Went to Bowling Green State University, so MAC school, hear a lot of that with Ohio universities as well, and studied sport management with a minor in marketing. And it actually started, if we take it back, I started as an education major. Kind of took the swing of sports pretty randomly, honestly. Kind of didn't understand that there was so many career fields and so many opportunities inside the sports industry until I got to college and was able to see those type of things. Always loved children, always loved being in that environment, taking care, being that caretaker. But then once I got to really understand the things that you could do in sports and the community relations side of it, it really helped to turn that wheel there. So I was able to do an internship here back in Cleveland as well with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and was able to just really connect with a lot of different groups there. I actually met with the Cleveland Monsters before I was even a part of the team, which was amazing to just hear some of the stuff they were doing before I was even a part of that team. Started as a sales seasonal, and so I did that grunt work, those packing of boxes and shipping out things, just that stuff that you don't necessarily want to do all the time, but you have to do it just to start off in your career a lot of times. And so just took that time and really to engage with everybody in the organization, as many people as possible. People that joke right now and say that I kind of know a little bit of everybody. I'll talk to HR, I'll talk to sales, I'll talk to anybody in the organization just to really connect and get to know. It's just important to me in general. And so then was able to take the opportunity when positions opened up to become the community relations specialist and just talk and just try to figure out that career path that I wanted to take. And so currently sitting in the community relations role, get to work with Joanna a lot of times, as well as the Cav side as well, with Emily and that team. So really excited to be here, and just really ready to learn and take this opportunity for what it's worth.
Thank you, Raven. And next we have Renee, and I joked that I think this is the first Zoom call we've been on where you haven't been on a golf cart. So
Yes, you're right.
inside, but yeah, Renee, you're up.
Well, thank you. And Joanna, I think this is so great that you put this together, and it's nice for me to get an opportunity to meet so many other young ladies that are in the field of sports and in, you know, so many different areas here. So it's an education for me too, you know, and I think that we can all contribute so much to everybody else out there. So I guess my career path was a little bit different because it just went straight up in one direction. I started off, actually I'm the head golf professional at Cleveland Golf Course in East Canton, where I grew up. And my dad put a golf club in my hand when I was 3 years old. And so it was from a little tyke until junior golf to, I went away to college. I went to Ohio University, and then I went there for a couple of years, and then made my way over to the Ohio State University, where I actually captained the women's golf teams at both universities while I was there. And so from there, you know, I had competed a lot on so many different levels, starting from junior golf to amateur golf to like the U.S. Women's Open that's going on at this very moment today. You know, I ended up playing a lot of amateur golf, and then eventually turned professional, became a professional golfer, and for 13 years played on the U.S. Lpga tour. And that really gave me an opportunity to travel throughout the entire world, because the tour is so global, much more global now even than it was when I was playing. But after the tour, I then, you know, you find different things and different opportunities come about. And I lived in England for 7 years while I was still playing the US tour. So I was sort of back and forth across the ocean. And then when I stopped playing the tour, I actually became a head golf professional, the first female head golf professional at a private club in the entire United Kingdom. I did various things, and one thing, you know, one door opens and another door opens. And from there, I actually designed golf clothes for a while for a major fashion house in London. And the first people to buy was Harrods department store. And when Harrods bought and they did a front window display of my clothes, everybody else bought. So I did that. I've written a lot of articles was with a golf magazine over there when I was in the UK, and then eventually moved back to the US. And from there, I actually started in golf for my dad back in 1946. So next year will be the 75th anniversary for the golf course that he built when he returned home from World War II. So it's on the National Register of Historic Places. So I started off here, and it's funny how your life happens, you know, and I've sort of made a full circle and I'm back here now. But in between time, once I left the tour, I did things like I put together some tours to our HBC universities. I ended up making 25 trips to the continent of Africa, taking golf to the indigenous people of the continent. I have done so many different things. I turned from being a professional golfer, being a professional athlete, to then being a golf professional, where I now am an instructor and have ranked as high as the 10th best female golf instructor in the country by Golf Digest magazine. Wrote a lot of articles for Golf Digest also, still on the masthead there. Have done a lot of different things, like from television broadcasting with various people, from Ken Venturi to Frank Gifford to Pat Summerall, all to do with golf. So you never know where golf is going to take you. I mean, from being a competitor to being all these other things, from designing to writing to teaching to broadcasting, and currently in the middle of writing my autobiography, and also doing a lot of things to in preparation for our 75th anniversary. And then also next year, I am actually going to, I wasn't going to accept it at first and then decided to, but I'm the U.S. captain for the Payne Junior Solheim Cup, which is going to take place in Toledo next year. So the Solheim Cup will be in Toledo, and prior to that will be the Payne Junior Solheim Cup. So I'm currently the U.S. captain for that, and reading a lot, seeing who my team is going to be, because I'm the U.S. captain and Annika Sorestan is the European captain. So it should be fun. And in between all of that, I've ended up getting a honorary doctorate from the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, and a couple years ago went over where the University of St. Andrews decided to name their newest residence hall the Renee Powell Hall. So I spend time back and forth across the pond, but here is home. And as I try to tell everybody, you never know what's going to be there. So always take an opportunity to go into, don't close your door on anything, but look at everything as an opportunity. So that's it.
Oh, that's it. Just, I feel like every time I speak to you, you're telling me like, oh, I'm getting this award, or I'm getting this on. So, but thank you. And last we have, Jen. It's not like anything's going on in baseball right now, total off season. So happy you could make it here.
Thank you for having me. But first I have to ask, am I always going to have to follow Renee? Because I don't have a whole lot to say after hearing her story. So really super excited to be here. A lot of times, a lot of baseball execs, especially in minor league baseball, we actually do a great job of getting together, and normally around this time actually at the winter baseball meetings to meet each other and to make sure that we're connecting throughout the year. But never have I been on a panel with other females in Northeast Ohio. So I really appreciate you putting this together and hearing everyone's story, and even following Renee's long story and such a great path. But my story is actually pretty simple. I grew up here in Lake County. My family, my husband and my 6-year-old, we still live here. I went to college at Lake Erie College. I played softball there, and I studied communications, sports marketing, and sports business wasn't really a big major that a lot of colleges were offering at the time that I was in school. And as I started to become in my junior and my senior year, sports business classes were really starting to develop. And so I did take advantage and take all of the classes that I could. And my senior year at Lake Erie, I got a job with the minor league team in our county, the Lake County Captains. I took an unpaid internship in the ticket office, and I have been there ever since. I have dabbled in tons of different things, kind of climbing the ladder. And the year that I started in 2007 was the year that the Lake Erie Monsters were coming to town. So my boss, Selena, actually left and went to work for the Monsters, and I was able to fill in her shoes. And just like everyone has said here, you never know what kind of opportunity you'll get and what you'll make from it. And so for me, I started off as an unpaid intern. I did a lot of running to the bank and all of those other things. And anytime I had the opportunity to learn more and to do more and raise my hand and say, hey, I'll help with that, or work a little bit later, especially in my younger career, I did that. And last year I was promoted to GM of the team, and like you have mentioned, Joanna, lots of things going on in the baseball world. So happy to be here and share anything that I can with all of you.
Awesome, thank you. So, I think a lot of times when people think about working in sports, they picture themselves wearing like a power blazer with a bunch of credentials on the sideline of a game, a football game kind of thing. But what we're hoping with this panel is to kind of show everyone that there's so many opportunities in sports and so many different paths to take. And so I would love if Lindsay could talk about her experience in college, and then maybe Angela, as you mentioned, you switched to that nonprofit world. So just if you guys could touch upon those ideas of you can work in sports and it doesn't have to be for a professional team.
I think someone said it already. I worked with college athletes for so long, and part of my mission I felt like was not only to get the team to perform and get wins, but was to give those young women a platform and an opportunity to become whatever they want to become. And so a lot of them had no idea coming in what type of professions are out there, and particularly in the world of college athletics, everything that goes into putting on a game. So, as the head coach of the team, I would kind of show up, and there's this production, and there's event staff, and there's people in the creative department, marketing, the business side of it. A couple of you mentioned you worked for IMG, these sort of partners of collegiate athletics. So I think there are a lot more jobs in athletics than people think that there are. And I think young people, particularly women, have to shift their mindset. I think oftentimes women say, all right, there's a job out there, I'm not going to apply because I don't have A, B, or C, when really they have D, E, and F, and I think men are much more likely to say, well, I have one of those characteristics, so I'm going to apply. I think women need to understand that the skill sets that they have, either by playing a sport or by being around sports or in their educational background, make them really qualified for some of these jobs. And in athletics, oftentimes what makes you good at your job are the things that are not listed on the job description. It's the willingness to be a team player, to do extra, to have communication skills, to have empathy, all these, characteristics that maybe would be considered traditionally kind of feminine on the spectrum, really work in sports. And I think women need to lean into that and embrace that. And one of the great things about college athletics is it's about these young people. So anyone in the athletic department, not just the head coach or the assistant coaches, felt like they were impacting the lives of student athletes. And I think that's a really cool aspect of college athletics that, maybe you don't get in the pros quite as much.
Definitely. I know, coming from a master's in social anthropology, much to my parents' dismay, but I do feel like, those skills you gain in other aspects of your life definitely translate to your professional career as well. So,
yeah, I agree with Lindsay too. I think it's really kind of about finding your passion, and you can align that passion. So if you, and again, it doesn't have to be I love golf or I love football. It can be I love that game day experience, and you can apply that in so many different industries within the sports world. And for me, when I started working with ISP at the time, then IMG, I never thought I'd be in sales. Like, I never wanted to do it. I mean, it was like a 4-letter word that nobody wanted to do, but it became more than that. It became about, I learned about the relationships and partnerships. But to me, I knew that to be in that, I wanted it in sports. I didn't want to go and sell in a different industry. I mean, there's nothing wrong with other options with selling office supplies or things like that, but I knew that wasn't for me. And I built on that and just knew that I was passionate about being in that sports world. And I think one thing to know, and I ask a lot of young people, I'm like, why do you want to get involved in sports? Oh, I love the games, I love this. And I said, well, then don't do it, because it's not about going to a game. There were so many times I didn't even know what the score was until the third quarter, and people were like, oh, that was a great game. I said, well, I didn't see any of it. I'm running around and here and there. And so it's, sports sounds so fancy and exciting, which it is. There's a lot of great upsides to it, but there's, it's hard work. Just like any career path you choose, you have to be willing to make some sacrifices, and but it's well worth it. And I think, like Lindsay did say, that there's a lot of times that men will apply for a position if they have one skill set, and women doubt themselves. And that's proven. I mean, I've seen statistics on that happens quite a bit. And don't hesitate. Don't think, oh, that's a male-dominated sport or industry. And, when I worked for IMG in the college division, I was, for the longest time, one of 2 women in the general manager role that I had. And I was the youngest one in that role. But I was given the opportunity, and I didn't wait for somebody to ask me. I asked for that opportunity. So I think I'm kind of touching on a few different areas. I'm going to ramble on, but I think you can definitely find an area, if you're really passionate about sports, something that can match up with what you're really wanting to do.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think as people are, a lot of questions that have come in are, asking like, how do I get into sports, or how do I make myself stand out in the interviews? And I think, as you said, it's just going for it and kind of using those passions to your advantage. And, and we're talking about kind of exposure throughout to other careers and everything. And I think what a lot of people don't realize too is, maybe Jen and Renee talk about, like, they've kind of been in the same sport, and Lindsay, that one, but the reality is a lot of times you're bouncing between sports. And so, with the Cavs, we're a franchise organization, and Erica mentioned it too. So I would love for Erica and Raven, maybe you guys could touch upon like what working at a franchise means and being able to work across sports, across leagues, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and start. And I just want to reiterate what Angie and Lindsay said. Getting into sports, you have to be passionate about it for the time commitment, the sacrifice, and everything you go through. People kind of see the front-facing glamorous side of it. There's so much more that goes into it behind the scenes that it's beyond being a fan. You really have to have a passion for it. So as I mentioned in my introduction, I went from working just for the Buffalo Bills to expanding my role with the 5 teams that were under ownership's umbrella, but it even went beyond that. I think in total there are around 20 some companies with venues that we operated, to hotels, to restaurants, to a creative services group. So what had happened is, the group that worked, for the Buffalo Bills, my team, and then the team for the Buffalo Sabres, once we were all under one ownership, we really merged together. And we had to basically, one, figure out how to work together, because essentially in the Western New York market, we were selling against each other. There were 2 professional sports teams, 2 of the large ones that we were selling against each other. So it really, I think we could be somebody's, thesis on kind of figuring out how we're structured, how to work together. Salespeople are highly competitive. So that was the interesting dynamic, but also to figure out structurally, how do we make this work with making sure that we're taking care of our fans and taking care of our customers. If that's a sponsor, if that's a ticket holder, we wanted to make sure that with coming together, we were making it a seamless transition and easy for, our customers at the end of the day. So, for us, it was, no 2 days are ever the same with 5 teams and all the other entities that we worked on. But what I will say is it allowed us the exposure to work with the different leagues simultaneously. And you kind of took those learnings from the different leagues, from the other, colleagues around the different teams that you would interact with, and really kind of build the best practices. What is working best in the NHL? Well, can that translate over to the NFL? And, even it's interesting, even some of the other teams, with the women's hockey team, even taking some ideas that maybe we couldn't execute on the NFL side, just based on, being more established in some of the rules, you would have the opportunity to maybe take, some of those opportunities and, try to see if they would be successful with some of the other teams that you worked on. So I will tell you, it was a really interesting time where we broaden our experiences. Some days we were working on hotel business, some days team business. It was one of those that I think really helped us learn a lot, gain a lot of experience, to help us really build better relationships with our customers and thinking through what's going to be best for them from all the different interactions we were having. So it was a crazy time with a lot of games going on too, with all the different seasons over, interacting or, at times. So.
Yeah, I think we definitely know that at the Cavaliers organization, and I know Raven can talk to that, not only sharing offices, but sharing an arena, and talk about similar market and everything too.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I work more on the hockey side, and I think just jumping back to Lindsay and Angela, just making it a point for women to not even just think about, you might be the only one in that space that look like you, that sounds like you, anything like that, but just definitely take those leaps and bounds. You never know the opportunity. I work with an amazing group of women on our team that I would have never, if I was thinking back in college to where it was me and my roommate in our sport management class with all males. And so just having that opportunity definitely is important. But thinking about our franchise groups, so we have the Cavs, the Monsters, the Cavs Legion, and the Canton Charge. And it's always interesting to see, I think Erica pointed out at the end, we're in one similar market, but you always have those things that sometimes fit best with one organization versus the other. And so it's super nice to be able to have that opportunity, even if I don't directly work with them all the time, just to bounce those ideas off of each other, just to be able to communicate and talk about those things that might work best with one team versus the other. I know me and Joanna, we definitely connect all the time. She's basketball, I'm hockey, but we're always able to try to connect and see what works best for your organization. And not everything connects, and some things do. We definitely have a different audience in hockey versus basketball at times. So it's always interesting just to see those things there. And it's just great opportunity as well to understand and to be able to have those dynamics. And I think as a young person coming into sports, it's important to just be able to have those different outlooks and be able to learn from people that have been in your position or been in your shoes. Is always interesting and super fun. I love listening just to people and their experiences. Like right now, I'm just like, and so it's just super fun to have that opportunity there, and just being able to work and connect and have people that overlap so much. And I know there's plenty of people in our organization that will definitely talk about it. Even thinking about events, we're like, okay, how can we connect? Okay, we're having a Monsters event, but let's have the Cavs Legion there set up with their video game and esports to offer that different opportunity, because a lot of people, I can talk to adults. They're like, yeah, the esports team? Like, what? I'm like, yeah, we do. That's a career? Yes. So just exposing people to that type of stuff. I think I've had the great opportunity being from Cleveland as an African-American, and then in hockey, being in the city of Cleveland, you get plenty of kids that have looked at me like, you work in hockey? I'm like, yeah. So it's always just super interesting. And I think I take that as a big pride thing, and not even pride, but just I own it and hone into it to try to expose as many people. That's one of the big things that our organization has been just working towards, is just exposing people that have never had that opportunity. And so organizationally, we've been able to come together in that aspect there. And so it's been really nice just to be able to have a lot of different people with the same mindset, with so many different sports up under the umbrella.
Definitely, and you're using some of the things we're going to talk about later, so just hold on just yet. But and another word that we've kind of heard people talk about is business, right? Sports is really a live entertainment business. There's so many more facets than just players, coaches, court, or field. And so I would love, Jen, in your new role at GM, as a GM, and then even Renee, fashion designer on the resume. Okay, so hearing you guys talk about just kind of the different business aspects that people don't even think about when thinking about sports.
Yeah, that's a super important question, because I think as we were talking about college athletes and people in college trying to understand what place that they want to, make their mark, I think a lot of times in sports world, people think, again, if you're not on the sidelines, that's not a job for you, or if you're not into marketing, maybe sports isn't for you. But we have finance directors, and we have operation managers, and we have HR, and all types of different fields that people don't necessarily think happen in the sports business world. And so for my position, I sort of oversee all of those things, and specifically for me, I oversee our facility agreement with the city of East. Like, we don't own our facility, but we have an arrangement with them, and so I work with them almost every day on things that need to be updated at the facility, or if there's grant funding to apply for. I oversee our marketing and advertising campaign, and so we have a graphic designer, and then we work together to kind of produce what those ads look like, and I work on our marketing budget and how we're going to spend those funds and the fans that we try to reach. Since we are a minor league baseball team, we don't have our own players. So we're not like, the Cavaliers that have our own players, and it just doesn't happen that way. So for us, we're an affiliate of the Cleveland Indians, and there is a player development side. So there's a staff at the Indians that I work with to make sure that the facilities are up to code, that all of the travel arrangements, the busing, the hotel stays, everything is arranged on our league standpoint so that the players can have access to the facilities that they need to, and the hotels know when they're leaving. And so there's a whole lot of detail that goes into the prep of everything that happens. A lot of times people will say, like, what, you work in the winter? What do you guys do in the winter? All of the hard work actually is done outside of the regular baseball season, and then you kind of work all of those crazy late hours to see all of the work that you've done kind of come together, just like a coach. You guys work so hard in the off season, and you get to play your games, and not that you're not working hard, but the hard work is put in outside of the season generally. So anything on our legal side, anything with logos, our sales team, corporate sponsorship, I oversee
all of those things and sort of our staff and our team that go with it. So to tons of different things like utilities and all these things that no one can really prepare you for, but you sort of figure it out as you go. And, you know, we don't have other teams necessarily that we own anymore. We did actually a few years ago, but now our ownership group only owns us. But we are super fortunate in our league, the Midwest League. We do similar things that you guys do, where we get together as a league and we pitch best practices and work on, you know, national sponsorships and some other things. So super fortunate to connect with great people in our league, similar to, you know, the Cavs having the Monsters in the Charge and things like that.
Definitely. Yeah. You know, it's like a utilities bill. You're like, wait, you still have to pay utilities, but you're a sports team. I thought you're untouchable. And I know, Renee, you guys have been doing a lot with the course too. And just, you know, not only have you had this career, but you also have this course and this business that you run. And I'd love to hear about that.
Well, that's right. You know, I guess everything that I've done in the past was always leading up to where I am now. But, you know, in growing up, I learned how to do everything on the golf course too, because I learned how to mow greens, I learned how to mow fairways, you know, and drag hoses around and water greens and things. So that side I learned, and I think all of it has prepared me for things that I'm doing now. And certainly, you know, taking over and you know, while I was out gallivanting around the world playing and competing, you know, my whole family was here really keeping the golf course going. My mom, my dad, my brother, who's the superintendent here, a member of the GCSAA. But you know, I've always had my hands in everything, and as everybody else said, you know, you learn how to do everything. So I did all that grunt work too, but for the family, right? As I was growing up, and now it's like, you know, a lot of responsibility, and the things that, you know, because of the fact that Clearview is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's a whole legacy of and a very significant part of American history. So, you know, so I look at it in such a different way that I have a huge responsibility and an obligation, because of what it is not just a golf course, but it's much more than that. And, you know, and the thing is, we're a foundation here too. So it's a Clearview Legacy Foundation for Education, Preservation, Turfgrass Research. And so all those things that fall under that are things that, you know, a lot of things that I'm am responsible for, and helping to grow and helping to make sure that for the, you know, after the first 75 years that everything is here, the legacy and everything is secured for the next 75 years, so we can all look down and see, you know, everything's still, you know, going on in you know, in glorious fashion. But so the things that I have done in, you know, the last couple of years, I actually served on the national board of the PGA of America, and it was actually the first time in 104 years that a Black PGA member actually served on their national board. And they actually created a position for me to serve. They created a position called Member at Large, which never existed before, and then called me and said, we are appointing you to this position. So, but also that was good because it was seeing the inner workings of a big association. There's 29,000 PGA members, and I've been a member there for 24 years now. So seeing those workings, and everything sort of blends into the things that I do here. You know, because as I said, golf has been my world, but there's so many different facets of it. And as everybody else was saying, you know, we talk about clothing design, because everybody has to wear clothes. So you wear golf clothes, and what do you wear? What does it look like, you know? And you know, all the things behind the scenes, you know, and anything that you can think about in corporate America happens in sports too. So, you know, a lot of people want to have events at resorts. So there's the food and beverage, you know, industry. There's the, as they say, there's the media, that's the print media, the electronic media, and graphics, everything in between. And I think that, you know, growing up in this business has helped me to be able to continue to expand the business, and traveling the world as I have, I've been able to bring so much back here to, to home, and growing different programs. So recently the Lpga decided to honor me by naming they created the Renee Powell Lpga USJ Girls Golf Grants. And to get more, actually to be able to get more African-American girls into the game of golf. Because when you look at there are, I think, 496 sites around the country, Lpga, USJ Girls Golf Club sites, but there are very few African-Americans that are part of that. And so that's another area, another business, that's sort of attached to what the Lpga is doing. So everything has, I think everything has something else that's attached to it. Today, we talk about other jobs. I just spoke to Lynn Brown, who is the head attorney, lead attorney for the PGA Tour. So, there's that aspect of it, because somebody said that they wanted to go into law, didn't they? Forget who it was when they were growing up. But there's so many different aspects that you can go into in sports itself, and it continues to expand. And as we said, when opportunities, present themselves, and you need to take advantage of that too, because you never know where things are going to take you in life.
Yes, definitely. I think it's just so cool hearing everyone's different experiences and just things that I didn't even know. I've spoken to all of you almost extensively, and just every time I speak to you guys, I feel like I learn about something new, which is so exciting with sports. And I think, a lot of people are asking, kind of that, how do I make myself more marketable? How do I work in sports? I get calls from, from my alma mater of kids who want to work in sports, and how do I do it? And, I think what a lot of you guys show is it's just really going for it, right? It's kind of taking unapologetically going for it and being yourself. And, a lot of people are asking, how do I make myself more marketable, or those kinds of experiences? And I think, from what everyone's saying, it sounds like you just have to kind of go for it, be confident in yourself. And one story I love that Erica told me was the experience you had on the Bills plane, going on. So I don't know if you want to just share that quickly for the group.
Sure.
That sense of, I'm here and I belong here kind of thing.
Yeah. I've been on the sports side for, over 20 years, and I will tell you a lot of things have changed. And a couple of things, I was telling Joanna as, things have progressed, with women in sports. I'll start with the Browns. When I started at the Browns back in '99, there were memos that would go out limiting what floors females could go on based on if players were, in the building or what have you. And that was just kind of common, knowledge and rules you had to follow. And then 10 years ago, on the Bills plane, we were talking about, I was the first female outside of ownership and family to go on the team plane, because prior to that, females were not allowed on the team plane. Now, if you've ever been on a team plane, you're very much separated from the players, but it was a rule that females were not allowed to be on the plane. So here I am, the first one being on it. And as I said to Joanna, I said I was going to make sure that I was not going to ruin it for any females moving forward. I never left my seat. I basically sat straight forward and did not make eye contact with anyone, because I was determined to make sure there were opportunities moving forward. If we had a business reason to be on that plane, we should be on that plane. So we were joking about, how things have advanced even, from 10 years ago. But those were a couple of the situations that were interesting when you were starting out, in my sports career, and then even as recent as 10 years ago.
And I know, kind of going off that, a lot of questions we have too of how do I gain the respect of male colleagues, or how do we have our voice, make sure our voice is heard as women. And so I would love, I know, Lindsay, obviously you're in a very male heavy field and everything, and the MBA, I would love to hear kind of how you've been going that transition from women's basketball in college. And then Angela, you and I have talked about your relationship with your board of directors and those kinds of things, and how you're doing that.
This is so This is so interesting. You know, one of the other women in the NBA reached out to me yesterday about something, and she texted me and said, "Hey, is there like it's her first year. She's starting her first year in the NBA on a coaching staff." And she said, "Hey, she knows me pretty well, but she's like, do we have a group? Like, do we, should we get together once a month?" And now that I'm like hearing other people, I'm like, oh, we should definitely do that, because I think there's just a unique, Erica, to your point, like this thing that we carry all the time when you're a first or when you're an only, which is the weight of the entire gender. And I know, African Americans have felt that their entire lives of, I have to not just be good, I have to be excellent, I have to be better than anybody else so that, the next person has a chance. So I do think that we all feel that. And it's just part of it. But I would say that in terms of gaining respect, I'll give it to you from a coaching lens a little bit in dealing with players, but I think it's universal. And that is that the first way to gain respect is to know what you're doing. Do you know your stuff? The guys that I coach, like that's the number one thing. They don't care, sort of what you sound like or what you look like, but it's, do you know what you're doing? Can you help me get better? And do you care about me as a human being? Now, colleagues, in other situations, I don't know if your colleagues care about that as much, like the do you care about me? In coaching, that's a real thing. They really want to know if you know your stuff and if you can make them better and if you care about them, as a human being. But I would say that all leads back to being authentic. To gain the respect of your male colleagues, I think the goal is not to pretend that there's no such thing as gender differences. Just like in social justice, the goal is not to pretend that we're all colorblind. Like in fact, that can be really offensive. That means I don't see you, right? Like I don't want the people in the building to look at me and think I'm just like everyone else. I want them to think that I'm a female and I'm just as good as everybody else, or I bring unique and different things to the table. That's what diversity is. That's what inclusion is. It's valuing differences and perspectives, but you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be good at your job. And then you have to, I think, be authentic, because if you're pretending to be something else, that's gonna come off and it's not gonna work.
Definitely. And too, you're talking about diversity, and I think diversity goes beyond gender and race as well. And that's kind of, Angela, I talked about is age, so especially as young women are coming into the career and becoming professionals, how do you find your voice as a young person in your professional career?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big part of it, because some people will look to you as, well, you don't have the experience, so you might not know, or I'm just going to discredit your opinions and thoughts. But I think actions speak louder than words, and I think that carries over in so many aspects of your life. But the harder you work and you show in your actions that you know what you're doing and that you're fighting for your organization or your position, or just you're doing the best that you can be doing. And I think that it can be challenging. And I think when I was in IMG, I was younger, but then I was with a lot of colleagues, and we were all very similar aged. And then when I transitioned to the first tee, it kind of shifted. I became even younger with dealing with some of former board members or former individuals that were involved with the organization. And I've had some challenges where I'm automatically discredited because, at times I feel like it might be because I'm a woman or my age. A lot of times people will go to someone else on my staff that's a male, ask them a question that I handle. And in the way I handle that is I kill them with kindness. I go back to them and I say, you know what? I understand you had some concerns about X, Y, Z. Let's talk about it. Let's come to me. Let me help you figure this out. How can we work together? And I appreciate your input. How do you want to help me fix these things? So I never take that as, it does. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't bother me, but I also take that as an opportunity for an educating that other person to know they may not know me that well, or they may not know my background or whatever it may be. So I want them to know and feel You may have an individual that's a tough donor and they just test you. You may not be in that position in the long term, and then that person could be your boss someday, or that person could be in a very crucial role for you. And so I always think of that as a prospective future opportunity. You know, you want to make sure that you treat people like you want to be treated, but also do it where you can show them that you know what you're doing by walking the walk and doing it with your actions.
Definitely, and that transitions so perfectly into my next question. But first, I just need to remind people, if you're watching on the Vimeo app, you can submit questions that we'll answer later on. So if you guys have some burning questions, feel free to drop those in that chat. But this is kind of for the group at large. A lot of what you've talked about, and we talk about gaining respect of colleagues and everything, is it's relationships. It's the people you work with. And so a lot of what we hear about as women is women mentoring other women and pulling each other up. And even beyond that, now you're starting to hear, wait, no, we need men to be mentors too, and to help pull each other too. And so I just wonder if anyone has maybe a mentor that was really helpful for them in their career, or any kind of stories of mentorship that I think people might be able to relate to. Because again, as we've talked about, so much of this it's not about you, but it's these external relationships you have, and that's what's going to help you in your career as well. Don't all jump at once. It's fine. Normally I've been kind of feeding it, but this is a little more open-ended.
I'll jump in here. Just coming out of college and honestly just looking to figure out what I wanted to exactly do. Just having people in my life really just continuously encouraging me to take that position with the Cleveland Monsters as a seasonal. I was like, it's a seasonal position. I'm like, I got a degree. That was just like my thinking when I first got out. I'm like, I should be doing something better than this. But looking back on it, that position really opened up doors and just allowed me to be able to just get into the room and to talk to people and to understand those who were in my seat, and just really having that connection with the people surrounding me and understanding just their career path. And everybody seemed to said, yeah, I started in your position too. And so it just really made it feel better. Like, okay, change your outlook a little bit on this and take advantage of the opportunity that you have, even being in this room, was really just the encouragement that I had continued to receive to even get to where I am today. Was just kind of my little nitpick there.
One thing I would add to that, rather than give a story of a particular mentor for me, I think it's more of a mentality in athletics. So when I have former players that I've coached now, or young people say, well, how do I get started? What job should I take? I think sometimes they think about, in the coaching world, what's the name of the school? Should I take a job in basketball operations at a Power 5 school, or should I take a coaching job at a smaller school? And I imagine the questions are similar in your other fields. Do I want to be lower on the totem pole at a big company, or do I want to do, get my hands on more things at a smaller company? And what I always say to people, because sports is so non-traditional, because there isn't one path that you do A, B, C, and then you reach the top, I always say it's about who you work with. So if there's a chance to work with somebody, your direct boss, or, again, in coaching, a head coach who empowers people, who is going to make it a good place to work, who's going to teach you things that far exceeds, the name on your shirt, or, what the title is. And it's kind of to your point, Raven, like I think in sports, you got to throw away the titles, especially when you're young, and do it for what the experience is going to be like. Because if you're happy and someone's engaging you and empowering you, you're going to be more successful. And if you're getting to do more things more successful, that will open more doors. You might not be able to see them. So I think you have to be good at the job that you're doing. You have to have 2 feet in before you start thinking about the next thing. And I think it's easier to do that when you have a really good mentor or somebody around you.
Yeah, I agree with Lindsay, and working with the same team. I've been with the same team for 13 years, and for me, it has been having that mentor. Which in baseball, it has pretty much always been male. So, Rob, Brad, Neil, if you guys are listening, I have appreciated my time working with you guys, and they were always so great to say, this is why we do things. When I would go in and ask questions, it was always open door, and it was, for me, it was always, hey, what if I learned this, or I'm more interested in doing this now that I've done my job. How can I grow? I've prepared these reports. Can we talk about these, and how do I grow? And so for my entire time with the Lake County Captains, I've always had that mentor that I could go to talk to. And for me, it has always been male. Luckily, there have been not a lot of issues for me personally, kind of breaking down those barriers. I've always been lucky to work with those guys and so many other ones along the way. But I think Lindsay's right. It's really having that mentor and that team of people to kind of go back to. And for younger females, don't feel like you can't ask those questions. A lot of times people above you, and me now, and they see that I want people to come talk to me. I think oftentimes people think like you have the big office and the big door and they're afraid to talk to you, but that's really not it. I always want the interns to come in and not necessarily ask my story, but I want to hear their story and see how I can help build their story.
Jen,
Yeah.
I think you,
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think mentoring is kind of a 360-degree look too. I mean, it's not about just who is, in a higher position, again, if you're throwing out titles, but someone who may be more experienced in an area that you aren't, that person, someone kind of a colleague level, and then maybe somebody newer to the field, like I could look to Raven and get some good insights from her on what she's been going through and what she's learning. And, so I think that throwing out those traditional sense of what a mentor should be or shouldn't be, and just knowing that it can be anybody that brings a positive force to your life and to your career, but also encourages you and pushes you. You want to make sure you feel that person is on your side, but also not afraid to tell you, hey, that's a mistake. You need to look at this and make some changes, or to give you that criticism, but in a positive sense.
I totally agree with Angie. I've been fortunate that my mentor was a male as well, and actually my first boss in sports. And to Angie's point, you need a mentor that's going to help push you. Maybe when you're not feeling quite as confident about, doing something or what, those mentors are there. And I've been very fortunate to kind of push me into areas that maybe I didn't think I had the ability to do, but the mentors that you have, they see something in you that maybe you don't necessarily see. And then you're thankful for their guidance, for, them pushing you to make you a better person. And I've been very lucky as well. And just to piggyback off what Jen said, in terms of being proactive, the interns that I've experienced over the course of my years, my favorite ones have been the ones who have proactively come to ask questions about the opportunities, to get guidance. Don't ever be afraid that maybe they're too busy to talk to you. I always make time and will still always make time to have those conversations. Be proactive, be assertive, because we want to hear, we want to engage in conversation. We want to be able to provide insight. And you know what? I also have learned as well, coming from their perspective as well. So my advice would be to be proactive and make those connections, because in the sports world, it's very small and it's, high profile and everybody wants to work in sports. Continuing to make those connections is only going to help you for long-term success, because you never know who may be where and where you may end up.
Yes, and I think that, you can always learn something from every single person you come in contact with. And the other thing is, if there's something that you want to go into, learn as much as you can about that area. You want to be a sponge and learn and continue to learn, continue to educate yourself. And I think that all of that helps to make you more confident in what and in who you are, and very confident within your own skin, and also allows you to apply for something else if you want to go forward. So it's continuing to learn, and as I say, from every single person we come in contact with, you're going to learn something from them too.
And I think that's definitely one of my favorite aspects of working in sports, is that as your interests change and you kind of develop an idea of what you might want to do, you're surrounded by someone who probably does that job. So it's very easy to be able to absorb new information and learn about new things. So I tend to joke that I have no technical skills. Like, I keep a paper calendar, but we have an entire Cavs digital team and production team, and I'm learning about all this app management, those kinds of things. But there's people, when you're in sports, because it's so all encompassing, that you get to work with, and you can, depending on where your interests as they develop, you have the opportunity to work with them, which I think is really cool. And kind of shifting to, based on questions we've had, work-life balance. does it exist? Do you want it? How do we get it? And, you know, I know a lot of you can talk about, especially being a woman and motherhood and stuff. And, you know, I know Jen, you kind of told an interesting story of you having your kid and everything. And, you know, I joke, one of Jan, her husband, he works in baseball, and he's like worried about leveling the yard. You know, can we ever really shut it off? Can we shut off our sports world? And so just a lot of people are asking about kind of work-life balance and how do we get it while still having our phones in our hands all the time.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I was in the sports world before my husband and I were married and before we had our little girl. And so it has just become normal. The 10-day straight homestands, 12, 15-hour day games, like they just become normal. And for Payton, our 6-year-old, she was born the day before opening day. She was born extremely early, and it was a big surprise. And she was born the day that all of the training was supposed to happen with my staff that was going to take over while I was on a short maternity leave. And so I think, you know, you just sort of roll with it, just like everyone has done with COVID, and just things look different. If you're in sports and then you start to have a family, I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, a lot of times females get out of sports, like they get in when they're young and then they get out of sports because they want to have a family. And I think it's important here to say, you know what, it is 2020 and there is no reason why you can't be a female working in sports and managing a family. And you know what, I do work a lot of weekends in the summer, and I do work a lot of weeknights. But at the same time, if my daughter has a dance recital or a t-ball game, I'm there. I'm her coach. I'm never missing that recital. Someone can take over for that 3-hour game while I'm not there, and we have more than enough time to prepare. And I think that that's so important, especially in the baseball industry, where we have worn like this badge of honor, right? And probably in basketball and hockey too, you guys wear this badge of honor that you've worked like 96 days straight and all of these hours. And when I first got into the business, people would actually like talk about that, and you'd be like, oh, I went home early that game. And now for me, that is one thing. As I was coming up, being AGM, it was the importance of family time. You know, we as a sports business, we preach family time, and we needed to have our employees be able to have that family time too. And so I started to kind of cross-develop staff so that, you know, we could rotate evenings off, especially some of the non-peak games. And certainly on weekends when we have Friday and Saturday fireworks nights, we need to have all of our families there. But we've done so much of a better job of inviting those families to the ballpark so that, you know, after the peak hours are done, we can enjoy the rest of the game with our family. And I think that across sports in general, that's more and more of what we're seeing. And I hope everyone can kind of share those stories too. But don't get out of sports because you want to have a family. I promise you can make it work.
Yeah, I was like Jen too. Before I was married, before I had my son, he's 8, I was working with IMG, and it's a little easier working those longer hours and those longer days. And you know, my son was about almost a year old, or just turned a year old, when I made the transition to come to First Tee from IMG. And partly I did make that change because of the extra hours, and I was commuting a little bit, living in Canton and driving to Cleveland 4 days a week. And, you know, and it just was, for me, I wanted to put my family first, but I didn't want to give that career that I love with working in this industry. So was able to find the First Tee. And for me, it was really attractive because to me, it's about what I do now. It's about kids. So it's an automatic built-in family environment. My son comes to work with me sometimes. He's in our program. We do a lot of family things. And, you know, and I think you have to have a work-life balance. And I know it's sometimes easier said than done, but you can't be your best self at home or your best self at work if you don't, because something is going to give. And the more you can try to work on that and balance it, I also think where you work and who you work for says a lot about it. You know, for me, if I were looking for a job, I'd be all about working for Jen in baseball because she cares about family and understands family comes first. And one of my first bosses that I worked with and down at Wake Forest, he would tell me that. He said, my family comes first. And that, to me, you know, before having a family of my own, I thought, okay, that's great, you know, but now I get it and I understand where he would come from. And I think so that's an important factor of a career path that you might be looking at. And what that environment is like, that work environment. You're not having, and I think that is changing and evolving, but there's still some expectation that you're, the work comes first. But I think that doesn't benefit anybody when you do that. Your family has to come first. And I think that makes everybody stronger and better employee when they can be happier in that sense.
I would just add, like, I think almost even the better term when you're in sports than work-life balance is work-life integration. That's what my husband likes to use. Because it's not most jobs in sports are not 9 to 5s, right? We're constantly juggling. And I do think that falls on women in a different way, oftentimes than it falls on men. Not exclusively, but it's more on the minds of women in these careers saying, how am I going to be able to do this? And I don't know that men face those same things. When I was the head coach at Cal and I had our son, he came everywhere with me. I remember telling the team, I'm still going to be the same type of coach, the one with an open door and be accessible. There might just be, a little guy around. And I did that. And I brought a nanny and I had him around, but, I had to recognize that privilege in that I was already the head coach and making enough money to have a nanny. There are assistant coaches or younger people who can't necessarily do that. And as it's evolved and coming to the NBA and my son getting older, now I'm more comfortable being away from him for a couple of days or sending him to family or friends. And I think there are different ways to get it right. And I think flexibility is key. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that it is something that comes up for women in this industry. And I think the more that we normalize that, the better it's gonna be for the women coming behind us. And we always carry that burden of not wanting it to seem like we care less about the job or that we're doing less. We're just trying to integrate that family piece a little bit differently. And I think that's an important aspect to just, keep out there, because I think there's still some ways to go with that a little bit to make it, really the most, successful environment for women, to succeed.
Definitely. I love the idea of work-life integration instead of, I think that's as we've talked about for so many things, it's just switching your mentality a little bit, right? Just reframing something again to make it more positive, more productive in your life. I know Ray about it, it's a big thing, and a lot of the questions we see really comes from, okay, I'm a woman, so I'm different, right? There's an otherness about me, so how do I address that and use it to my advantage or not, be taken away? And especially then there's other layers of race, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, those kinds of things. And so I would love to hear kind of, one of the things I love about this panel, so many things, but is that you're all right now working in kind of different fields and different sports. I would love to hear maybe people talking about how their industry is addressing it. And I think I want to start with Renee, because how often do you have a diversity inclusion kind of grant named after you? That's a thing. You just come, you're like, oh, they're naming this scholarship out in this program after me. So, golf especially.
Yeah, and golf is a very interesting sport. I mean, my entire life, it's never been a minority-oriented sport. And so from the time that I started competing, I was always breaking their barriers and oftentimes the only one here or the only one there. And so, you sort of get that becomes your life, right? But then I've always seen a correlation too between being a woman and being a woman of color, because, there's some of those similar barriers are there. But obviously, as things are going now, and I think everything really changed in the entire sports world and just life itself. But from the end of May and with the incident and the murder of George Floyd, and all of a sudden everything changed. I know we had the, so being on the board of the PGA of America, we conduct the Ryder Cup and the PGA Championship. And so the PGA decided that they were going to really be quite outspoken about it. And I think it was it took place a little later this year. It took place in August, and CBS decided to get involved to do things, and they did a thing called 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And so many of the Black PGA members got together and said, you know, something needs to be done. And there are like 29,000 PGA professionals, but there's only 165 Black PGA professionals. And so, but our association listened. And so, because as I listened to everybody else here, I'm like the senior one of all of you. I'm like, oh my gosh, Raven, I could probably be your grandmother. But anyway, so I was the one that they just decided to have as a spokesperson for the overall the overall ads that we did. And so everybody sort of did an ad in a commercial. And then at the end, I was the one that was selected to do the overall one. But, you know, just watching how our different associations have addressed that, that the PGA actually listened. And I think what had happened is that the same thing that the NFL players did when they went to the commissioner, the Black PGA members went to our board and went to our CEO and said, we need to do something. And so there's been a lot of talk about that and a lot of changes. The same thing with the Lpga. And so I was on a call recently, a town hall call, where we don't have nearly as many Black Lpga members. I think there's like probably there are 11, I think, that are Class A members in the Lpga teaching division. We have one Black player that is on a full-time member on the Lpga tour, which is Mariah Stackhouse, and sometimes Cheyenne Woods plays. But both sides, and in listening to our town hall meeting with our commissioner of the Lpga, players got together and they said, you know, there are incidents that happen. And so everybody is listening. And I think that's the important thing, is that the associations, the sports industry, they're all listening, and they want to make and know that they need to make changes. And they're talking to say, how do we do this? There have been so many different groups that have been formed within the associations. And so I think that's a great thing. It's a very refreshing thing to see, because people are actually trying to make a difference in what is happening. And I know I had been in communications with the commissioner of the PGA Tour, and he said to me, he says, did you see that I announced that over the next 10 years, we are putting $100 million for 10 years into diversity and inclusion. And so people are really starting, in my profession, in golf, as I said, it's been very much a white male dominated sport. And to see things changing, and we probably have taken the longest time to change than anybody like baseball or basketball or football, but we are, and everybody's getting together, and they're saying this, this is what we need to do. We all need to come together as a nation. We all need to come together as individuals, and we're listening. You help us to make changes. And that's what's happening in my profession.
Amazing. Yeah, no, as we've talked about, it's definitely something that's on the forefront of people's minds, and especially in sports, that connection, of, not only a lot of times I feel like people see athletes as these untouchable things, but the reality is they're people, they're people who have those same life experiences as us and everything. And, I'm sure, like Lindsay, I'm sure you have some stories about the conversations you had, the NBA being very, being outspoken about its social justice initiatives and everything with that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, just about the humanity of it, I remember in a team call right after, the murder of George Floyd, and the aftermath of that, the single thing that probably was the most moving to me was, a player on our call, said any time that, I see a police car go by, like my heart races, I have fear. doesn't matter what his bank account says, doesn't matter how many followers he has on Instagram, or, you know, the life that he leads. And I think if more, like, that's what this movement is about, right? Conversation amongst people, listening to people, hearing their experiences, having empathy, and trying to say, you know, regardless of where you stand on a political spectrum, you know, that, like, human being to human being, you know, that those feelings are valid, you know, and we have to do something to change the system that makes that possible. So I think that was probably my, you know, my moment, and coaching for 8 years at Cal with a mostly African-American team, seeing you know, the world through their eyes, and literally watching, you know, them be treated certain ways, and, you know, acknowledging the privilege, you know, that I have not to be treated that way. And then I would say the other big, you know, thing of this summer relative to sports were the women of the WNBA and the men of the NBA, and then other athletes, you know, Naomi Osaka as well in tennis, like saying, no, this is too important. We're willing to not play, and have society, you know, see that it's that important to us. I think that, you know, idea of being in sports and recognizing the platform that you have is one of the most, you know, significant takeaways from this, you know, this era, I think, as well.
Yeah, and you know, I think I know I saw Raven on mute because I was about to turn it to her anyway, just like she knows, but it's also privy to what the monsters are doing. But you know, what Renee mentioned of sports that have predominantly, you know, certain white males or certain audiences, and kind of how those are shifting now too. I know Raven has some things working.
No, Joanna, you're fine. But I was just really thinking back to just the team member portion of just that time period of after the George Floyd. We had a very transparent staff, and just everybody willing to listen and acknowledge a lot of things in their life that you just may not see, like Lindsay said, like just having that acknowledgement within yourself that there is that privilege in the world. And being on the staff that, if you look at the Focus Monster staff, I am the only African-American female. And so a lot of things that I see or that I think about are a little bit different. Just driving home, like Lindsay said, like seeing the police officer, you're like, okay, where's my license? Where's these things at? Just so you're not fumbling around and doing things. I am a CCW. I have my concealed carry license, so that's automatically put on my license plate. And so just having that extra thought, and just really the team members that even reached out and just wanted to talk and just understand was just really big, to know that that support system was there. Even though they may not look like me, they're definitely sitting in that ally corner, and really just thinking twice about those things. It was just really a moving time. I think I cried too many times that week. Everybody called me just all the time, but just having that acknowledgement and just having those conversations, and from the youngest person on our staff to the oldest person on our staff, like everybody just having those conversations, and even just still having those conversations within our team. And they're not always the most comfortable, but you got to get uncomfortable sometimes. And just acknowledging those things, and just acknowledging the groups that are around us, and being in Cleveland, and understanding what's right around us and how can we impact the community from a hockey standpoint, even if it's just in the youth hockey point, to start understanding and getting those young girls, young men, African Americans, Asian, anything of color, and just not the norm into the game is definitely something important that I know our team is currently working on, and just trying to really impact that community from a first standpoint.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, like it's always evolving, and these conversations are always happening, right? And so I think that's kind of the exciting part, is that everything's just expanding and opening up, and those opportunities are. And so kind of what we're hoping to see is, you know, the experiences Erica had in 1999 are not similar to the experiences she had today, and will not be, you know, similar to the experience she has another 10 years. And so I think that's the really exciting thing about just the world and society, right? Is things change, and all of a sudden you're not the first, you know, I know you're not the first person in your office to have a baby. You're, you know, there's been that precedent set and everything. And so that's really exciting. So I know we did have a few questions come in, some from Marco. He said, for people and organizations who want to involve, hire, or inspire more women, how can they best find and connect with them? I don't know.
I would say first thing you would do is look within your organization, because you might have some fantastic women that are in positions. And again, I think we've all talked about, don't be the person that sits back and waits till somebody comes to you, but there may be somebody that's not comfortable with having that outgoing personality to say, I'm interested, I want to step up. But I think that's your kind of take a look internally, with your staff, and there might be somebody right there that would be a good option to help grow and mentor them into a stronger role. And I think it goes back to networking too, and just networking at different events and getting out in the community, whether it's through chambers, things like that, just meeting individuals where you can. I mean, that's a big part of what I do with my job is I make a point to know, other nonprofit youth leaders in the county, and how are they all working together. And so it's just your network, and who's in your personal network, but who's in your professional network.
I would just add that to, I believe the person who asked the question was a male, like to male allies, that the onus is on you to expand your network. Just like, for white people, the onus is on us to become anti-racist, right? To reach out to other people. That's how you get real change. And so I'll give you two examples. When I took this job in the NBA, I had a couple other NBA people that I sort of knew that were like, oh, like, I didn't know you want to work in the NBA. And I was like, well, you never asked, or you never created a job that would draw me away from what I had, which was good, and where I say it's on men, just as an example of how a male can be a great ally. JB Bickerstaff, our head coach, we were getting ready to have a potential new intern type position. And so he said to me, I want women in that pool. Who do you know? And to me, that's all you need to do. Go to your female colleagues that you do know, because he doesn't know as many women as I would. And so then empower other people to say, hey, how do we make this pool more diverse? And I think that's being an ally, that's being progressive, that's trying to really, push diversity in a meaningful way.
Definitely. I think it all comes about, just being proactive, right? It's not something you can passively wait to happen. You kind of have to whether it's to hire people or to go after positions too, whatever side you're on of it, it's proactivity. We do have a question for Jen from Natalie of what was your favorite department to work for the captains? I don't know if you want to name favorites, but.
I do have a favorite, one that I've actually held on to, and I definitely teach people along the way, but hard to give up since that was one of my favorite things to take over our merchandise department, hats, t-shirts, all of that stuff. One of the things that fell into my lap as we had some staff changes, 12 years ago or so, was our team shop. And so I got to go to a winter baseball meeting and sit with a bunch of different vendors and go through catalogs. Now everything, of course, is all digital and much quicker than it was then, but to design all of our merchandise in the store, which led me to so much more, being so much more creative on our ticket sale side and with corporate partners and developing more in-game signage. And so I think that's just a testament to what we've talked about is, take an opportunity that you have and love it and see where it leads you. And so I still really love that small part of what the job is, but I think that it opened so many other doors for me and created more creative thinking, which normally wasn't my cup of tea.
To me, I'm loving and front office work, just what does it take to make that transition from being in college to then move into coaching in that world?
I think if you're in college, networking as much as you can. So when I was in college, I knew I wanted to get into coaching. So my coach actually let me be sort of a student assistant while I was still playing my senior year. But if you don't want to go that extreme, you play a different coaching staff every night that you're in a game. Introduce yourself, build your network, let people know that you want to go into coaching. Circle back with people if you are a college athlete, maybe they recruited you and you didn't choose that school. You can say, hey, remember me, now I want to get into coaching. And I think you have to be willing to take any number of jobs along the way. Like right now, it's hard to get in as a coach. It might be ops, it might be in video, but you can learn the business by doing all those different positions. When it comes to the pros, remember there's only 30 NBA teams, but there's the G League as well. If you want to kind of take that pro direction, I feel like being willing to work kind of in any level or aspect of basketball makes you more well-rounded. Over the coaches on our staff who've worked overseas, who have worked in the G League, who have worked in college, who have worked in the NBA, kind of bring a varied perspective. So the willingness to work kind of at any level and with men's or women's obviously opens up opportunities. But those would be my first, pieces of advice. Just build your network and be willing to get your foot in the door in any possible way.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're kind of wrapping up here. So just kind of the official stuff of, we will be sending out the recording to the list of everyone. So I know some people reached out and were like, I really want to watch this, but I can't. So don't worry about that, even though you're not listening right now, but just for them in the universe, it's out there. But I just want to thank our panelists so much. As everyone knows, I've been waiting for this for like a month, and this was just so incredible. So I just want to thank all of you guys so much for taking the time to do this. And I hope everyone got as much out of it as I did. And I just want to say happy Hanukkah to anyone celebrating on this first night, and, happy holidays to everyone. Please stay safe out there and stay healthy. And again, thank you so much for joining our Canton Charge Women in Sports virtual panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was nice to meet all of you.
Likewise,
here.
absolutely.
All right, take care, y'all.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
I think he's done.